The year is 2024, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but on the same day, two Olimar players won giant tournaments in completely different regions. That's right, today we had a massive tournament going on in France called Game is Game with over 500 entrants, and we also had a pretty big tournament going on in Japan. It was Delta number 7.5. Wasn't as, big of a tournament, had I think less than 200 people, but pretty stacked overall. Some really good players there. You got Umeki there, you got Toriguri, Ken was there. So both of these tournaments, pretty big and, pretty impressive to see Olimar take both of those tournaments. Olimar has been in kind of a weird place, and as an Olimar player myself, it kind of makes me sad to see Olimar just not really as big in America. DeBuzz doesn't really play the character as much anymore. Myron pretty much retired, and outside of that, you have a few Olimar players that are making names for themselves, but none are on the, the level necessarily that those players were at their peak. Really, all the Olimar players that we've been seeing have been coming from Japan, and those are two of the players that ended up taking these tournaments. Shuton won Game is Game in France. He went ahead and traveled over there and took the tournament. And then at Delta 7.5, we had a different Olimar player win the tournament. Maybe one that not everybody has heard of, and this is Uame, an up-and-coming Olimar player that has really made some improvements over the last couple years. And the crazy part is, I don't even think they're really considered even the best Olimar at that tournament, because there is another Olimar player that was there that I would say is, was favored to place higher, and I don't even think they made top 8. But yeah, if you guys didn't already know, I would say that Japan is the place where Olimar thrives the most. We have a lot of Olimar players over there, and really we kind of see the most results for that character in Japan overall. Europe has a really big Olimar problem, which I will get to later on, but everybody loses to Shuton when he goes there, and really to any Olimar player it seems like, and there really aren't any big European Olimar players in general, so I feel like they kind of lack that matchup experience. And then in America, like I said, we had DeBuzz, who doesn't really play Olimar as much anymore, and of course Myron, who kind of pretty much retired. And outside of that, we have Kando, we have MFA, both really good Olimar players, but overall in America, Olimar just isn't really seeing the success that that character used to see in the past. And again, I think a lot of that has to kind of do with the different metas in each different region. When you look at America specifically, we have a lot of top players that play sword characters or the FGC characters, and these are matchups that Olimar really struggle in. It's pretty hard to solo main a character that has really bad matchups, and I feel like with Olimar, that's a character that he doesn't auto-lose necessarily to certain characters, but there are matchups that are very tough for him. One of them being against sword characters in general, especially Cloud, and then also he really kind of struggles against characters like Kazuya, in my opinion. Meanwhile, in a region like Europe, where the top players play Samus or Wario, these are matchups that are pretty good overall for Olimar, so it doesn't surprise me to see Olimar finding success over there. And then in Japan, you have all different kinds of characters, so on any given day, any character could just do well, it seems like. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to say which win here was more impressive, because I think both of these were very impressive. I will say the more surprising one, in my opinion, is Uame winning the tournament in Japan. I mean, like I said, this is not even the best Olimar player in the bracket, in my opinion, but they definitely placed the best. The other top Olimar player in this bracket was Noi, who was seeded 10th at this event, and they are an Olimar/Pokemon trainer player, but they were in loser side at the start of top 48 already. Uame is not really far off from Noi. I mean, they were seeded 11th at this event, so they are pretty close in skill level. I will say I feel like I see more results from Noi though overall. But overall, Noi was seated a little bit higher, but like I said, Uame ended up taking the whole event, getting first place. They were seated 11th, but they took first. And I will say, when you look at the breakdown of this bracket, it's not as surprising as it might seem why they ended up taking this event. Uame entered top 48 on the winner's side, and in order to make top 8, they had to beat Toriguri. Now, of course, Toriguri, very good player. We just saw what Toriguri can do in America, and that is, basically almost win a giant event. But if you don't already know, Olimar is one of Banjo's worst matchups. All the interactions with Pikmin just make it so frustrating to deal with, and it's really one of Banjo's worst matchups. Pretty much anytime you have Pikmin on you, you can't really go for Wonder Wing, you can't really go for Grenade because it'll just blow up in your face. It really just kind of shuts down your whole game plan. So Toriguri ended up losing that set 3-1. It's kind of impressive to see that he even took a game, honestly, but yeah, it's a really bad matchup for Banjo. And then in top 8, Uame had to face off against Leaf, who is a Robin player, and I can't imagine this being a bad matchup for Olimar whatsoever. I feel like Olimar has a lot of tools to deal with Robin. I have never really played that matchup because nobody plays this character, but I can't imagine that it would be too difficult. And honestly, Leaf had a really impressive run at this event, taking down Umeki, taking down one of the better Joker players in Japan as well. And I really think Leaf pulling off those two upsets is kind of what led to Uame winning this entire event. Because after beating Leaf, Uame only had to face off against Rimu's Min, and it was a close Game 5 set in Winners Finals, and a close Game 5 set in Grand Finals, but overall, Uame managed to find a way to close it out and just win the whole tournament. Olimar versus Min is kind of a tricky matchup overall, but I do think Olimar has the tools to kind of zone out Min, which is crazy to say because, usually Min is the one doing the zoning, but, with Min, just kind of The way that you have to angle the arms, it's kind of awkward because Olimar is so small, so you can kind of play around that with Olimar. It's very kind of frustrating to play that matchup, but it's definitely doable, I would say. But it's just crazy overall because, like I said, this is like less than 200 people. You're the 11th seed. You really don't see, you don't really see stuff like that, nowadays. I feel like when there's 10 people ahead of you in, such a small bracket, it's not really a small bracket, but it makes more sense, I would say, at these bigger tournaments, right, where there's like 700 people and you're the 10th seed. That's because everybody at the top is a really, really good player, right? At those kind of tournaments, you'll have a player like, I don't know, like Riddle seeded 10th or something, so it would be no surprise to see him win an event. But when the bracket is only like 150 people and you're the 10th seed, 11th seed, it is very, very impressive, I would say. And I do believe this is like the first or second like big win for Uame. I mean, we all kind of know how stacked Japan is overall, so like I said, this is a very, very impressive win. And speaking of impressive, we do have to go ahead and travel over to France at Game is Game. And again, this was like a 500 person bracket. I believe this was an A-tier event, and Shuton managed to pull it off. Kind of continuing his dominating streak over Gluttony. If you didn't know, Gluttony's set count versus Shuton is atrocious. I'm talking like, it's like 9-1 in Shuton's favor. So pretty much like as soon as Grand Finals was set to be Shuton versus Gluttony, like there was no point of really watching because you just already knew Shuton was about to take it. Overall, this was a super stacked bracket. We pretty much had all of Europe's best at this tournament. We also had some great players from America, like Mudace. We had some players from Japan, like Gact. Of course, Shuton was there. And yeah, this was just kind of like a huge event in Europe. And again, like I said before, Olimar kind of just dominates Europe. Like, it's kind of a running joke, I feel like, that Olimar just succeeds in Europe. And, you kind of know that's true when Shuton goes Olimar the entire bracket except for one set, which was against Mudace. And I mean, that's because Mudace probably knows the Olimar matchup. But other than that, Shuton went solo Olimar, which he pretty much never does anymore. He pretty much always plays Pyramithra, I feel like. So yeah, it kind of just shows, like, how good Olimar is in that region specifically. The crazy thing too is that Shuton didn't even drop any games, I don't think, until top 8. And even then, he had no game 5 sets. He only dropped one game to Mudace, he dropped one game to Gluttony, and that was it. Like, Grand Finals was a quick 3-0. And again, when you're kind of looking at the breakdown of this bracket, again, it's no surprise that Shuton was able to take this event. You kind of look at the people that he played against, and to get into top 8, he played against Siski. And, once again, kind of similar to Banjo, with Samus, Samus's worst matchup is probably Olimar. It's an awful matchup because you throw Pikmin, anytime you try to charge shot, you try to shoot missiles, it just immediately explodes, and it just makes it very difficult when you can't access half your moves. So playing against Siski to make top 8, no surprise there. Getting past Mudace, obviously pretty difficult, but once you hit winners finals, you're just playing Gluttony, and you're kind of up 9-1 in set count, so you're pretty much chilling from there. So overall, 2 really, really solid wins from Uame and from Shuton. So what exactly does this weekend mean for Olimar moving forward? Are we going to see more Olimar players? Is this character going to start, winning tournaments left and right? Well, I really don't think so, but this is still very, very good for the character. Like I said, when you look at the bracket breakdown in both of these brackets, you'll see that both Olimar players, they had some really good brackets going for them. They played against a lot of characters that, Olimar can either go even with or just overall dominate, in general. So I think that's very helpful in obviously winning the event when you're going up against these matchups that are kind of favorable to you. Nonetheless, it's impressive either way to, win over these top players like this. So, it is very impressive from both players. I'm not taking anything away from their wins at all, but I'm just saying that Olimar is a character that relies on some matchups, and that's a big reason why we don't see this character winning tournaments left and right. Now, I will say, every time I see an Olimar doing well, I kind of hope it gives some inspiration to the Buzz to play the character some more. But, he's always sticking with the Rosa, which I understand, I respect it. But I just love seeing this character do well, man. Like, this is like my favorite character in the game. And I think he really does have potential in the meta, like he obviously has some bad matchups. I don't think at top level it's really possible to solo main this character, but I do think that this is a viable secondary kind of character, or if this is your main, having a secondary that kind of covers those bad matchups, I think it makes it very doable. And I think that it's such a niche character that it still provides a lot of value, you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you'll main a character and you'll have a secondary and it's kind of just similar to a lot of other characters. With Olimar, like, there's no character like Olimar, and so I feel like having a character like that in your arsenal, like, you're just able to completely counter people that don't know that matchup. Or you can completely counter characters like Banjo and Samus that have nothing to do with the character. It makes me excited to see Shuton, still doing it with the Olimar, and to also see newer Olimar players on the rise. And again, that's because we don't really see too much Olimar anymore in America. It's kind of just in Japan, and I guess when Japan travels. But all that being said, let me know what you guys think about Olimar right now in the meta. meta? Are you excited about Olimar? Am I the only one that actually likes this character? Let me know in the comments. I'm telling you guys, if you've never played this character, go ahead and give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. I know people kind of hate on the character, but I think he's a lot of fun. He kind of adds a lot of uniqueness to the game, and it's just fun to play against other people with this character. Big shout out to Shuton and Uame for taking these big tournaments, and I really hope to see more top finishes from these players and from all the other Olimar players. Shout outs to all of them improving the meta and showing that this character has value to the game. That's going to be it for the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Smash content, and I will catch you all in the next one.